Is this for rich people? Is this entire list just for rich people? Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and I normally talk about books on this channel, but not today, because today is my 29th birthday. It won't be by the time this video comes out, so there's no need to happy birthday message me. But as I'm filming this, I've turned 29, and because in this days of isolation and staying at home I have nothing better to do, I thought I would have a look at what the internet thinks I need to get done in my life before I turn 30 in exactly 1 year. So I'm sure you've seen those lists around, right? They're like things you need to get done before random arbitrary age, and there are so many lists out there on the internet with the title 30 things to do before 30. Like, once I turn 30, basically that chance has passed and I'll never get to do those things again. So I had a look at a few, and I've picked the one on the Business Insider website to show you today. So we're going to be going through this list, which, by the way, bears the title 30 mind-expanding life experiences you should get done before you turn 30, because obviously we millennials aren't already told on a daily basis that we aren't doing enough. This is what the Business Insider says. Now is the time to tick off some big hitters on your bucket list. And it's not all gap years and fine dining. We'll see about that. Let's get into the first item, which is attend a full moon party in Thailand. Now, I am hoping that maybe one day in my life I will actually make it to Thailand. It's probably not going to happen before I turn 30, let's be honest, because the prospect of me going anywhere beyond the car park outside of the house at the moment is not very appealing. Very unlikely this is going to be in the next 365 days though. The next item on the list simply says move abroad, and yeah, that's something I have already done. I am already living abroad. I am living in Wales and I was born and grew up in Germany. I've been here for just over 6 years now, and I feel like my move abroad phase has finished and I cannot wait to move back at this point. Quit the day job you hate, even if you don't have a backup plan. I have actually kind of done this, but I would not advocate for this as a generally good thing to do. So for a few years while I was doing my PhD, I was working in Clark's shoe shop, something I can now say now that I no longer work for them. And it was an absolute nightmare. I really did not like it. But you know, you gotta make money somehow. But then I noticed that my studies were really suffering because I was so exhausted from working Clark's that I just did not have the energy to then also do a PhD. So I quit the day job and I'm now living on the tiniest budget, but at least I have a little bit more brain space to actually get that doctorate, which is also not going to happen before I turn 30, but that's another discussion. Next item, learn to rock climb. Actually, I would quite like to learn that at some point. My friend and guest spinster Robin is an avid rock climber, and the pictures she posts from those excursions on Instagram always look amazing. So maybe this is something I'll get to do. Whether that's in the next year or not. Host a massive dinner party and cook everything yourself. Well, obviously, right? Why would you not cook everything yourself if you host a dinner party? Though I have to say, I am a fan of the potluck dinner as well. I do like having people over and everyone making something. What I usually do when I invite people, which again isn't going to happen for a while, but what I usually do is ask what people want to bring, because people always have something that they prefer making. People, generally speaking, don't like making desserts, but I do. So I usually end up making the cake or making the dessert, and that is fine by me. But I have also hosted dinner parties where I've cooked everything, because what other options are there? Do you host a dinner party and get takeaway? In that case, that's just hanging out with friends and getting takeaway, not really a dinner party. Next up, dress up in costume for a midnight film premiere. I know I've only just turned 29, but I think the day I turned 19 I felt too old for midnight film premieres, which isn't to say that midnight film premieres aren't for adults. But it is very much to say that my natural bedtime is 9 o'clock, and anything that goes beyond that has me incredibly tired and probably just wasting a cinema ticket to fall asleep in a nice dark room. I am not much of a cinema goer. As I've already mentioned, I tend to fall asleep. Plus I make really good popcorn at home, so what's the point? However, I do remember a premiere that I went to that was really fun, and that was back in 2013. I went to the cinema premiere of the 50-year Doctor Who special episode, and I wasn't dressed up in full costume because I do not have those skills, even though I would really, really quite like to own a Colin Baker coat. But I'm pretty sure I was wearing my sonic screwdriver in my hair and I was wearing my Tom Baker scarf. I'm just gonna count that as something I have done. The next one just says, go to Glastonbury. I've been to Stonehenge, does that count? It's kind of in the same bit, isn't it? I'm not a huge festival fan. I went to a festival once in 2011. That was because I was volunteering for Oxfam at Reading Festival. So I'm sure if you've been to a UK-based festivals, you've seen the stewards that are basically just giving their labour free for Oxfam. And I did that in 2011, which incidentally was the year that Ed Sheeran got really big. And he was playing the little stage that I was supposed to be guarding, and it was mayhem. I haven't been to a festival since. Next one, take a sabbatical to travel. Oh no, what millennial has the funds to take like months or even a whole year off to travel, honestly? Is this for rich people? Is this entire list just for rich people? Next one is train for a marathon. I'm good, thanks. Go to Venice. I have been to Venice and it's overrated. I'm really sorry to say that. I hope that none of my Italian family is watching, although actually they are from the south of Italy, so they don't give a crap about Venice. But if you want to see a beautiful city with canals, go to Amsterdam. Skip Venice. The next point says learn to fight. Okay, fight me in the comments. Dine alone at a restaurant, especially without a book or device. Surely everyone's done that, right? I've done that. Maybe I'm just really lonely. Get a pet. Now I wanted to use my cats for props in this video, but they have decided to sleep while I record. So unfortunately, you're just gonna have to imagine them, or actually alternatively go and follow me on Instagram, because at the moment I'm posting more pictures of cats than of anything else because they are just so adorable. Climb the Inca Trail. Sure. And then interestingly enough, the next point says start up a business, which I'm not quite sure if I'm supposed to do that between like Venice, Thailand, the Inca Trail and my sabbatical. However, now that you mention it, the closest thing to a business I have is my web shop, which sells t-shirts with classic literature scenes but reimagined with cats instead of people. So if you are a cat-loving, literature-loving introvert like me, check out the link in the description box. Buy a Le Creuset, which I believe is a brand of casserole dishes that Americans are obsessed with. I'm sure I've seen these in charity shops, but at the moment, obviously, I'm not going to any charity shops. Travel across Europe with no money. No, Business Insider. Bad advice. Do not travel anywhere with no money. That is a recipe for disaster. Do not travel to anywhere without money. What terrible advice is that? Anything could happen. Attend a white tie event. Yeah, if you invite me to one, I'll come. Mentor or volunteer. Now, I feel like those are two very separate things. I have volunteered many times in my life, but I can't say I've ever mentored anyone. And the idea of mentoring before you turn 30 sounds a little bit dodgy because, honestly, what do I or any millennial know about life that we could pass on to another adult? Unless you're thinking of mentoring children, in which case you're just babysitting, right? Visit the Grand Canyon. Yeah, sure, I'll do that right after Venice. And then pay off your student debt. Right, real talk. You can either do one or the other, right? You can either travel the world, go to Machu Picchu, go to Thailand, go to Venice, or you can pay off your student debt. You cannot do both before you turn 30. That is impossible. Unless, of course, you are born rich. I think this has to be my favourite point. It says, visit all of the world's most prestigious art galleries. Not just one. You've been to the Louvre? Forget about it, you have to see all of them. This is where you can tell that this article was written by an American. The next point says, learn a second language. Pretty much everyone in the world who is not a native English speaker has at some point in their life learned a second language. Some people grow up bilingually, like most of the kids here in North Wales. Pretty much anyone who doesn't grow up in an English-speaking country learns at least one foreign language at school. Some people, like me, are both bilingual and learned another foreign language at school. The idea that it is only before you turn 30, sometime in your adulthood, that you have to learn a second language is very Anglo-centric. Quit smoking, including marijuana. Well, I have never smoked anything in my life, although I am weirdly good at rolling cigarettes for a non-smoker. Experience Rio Carnival. Sure, I'll add that to the travel list. Learn to drive. Another piece of bad advice. I learned to drive when I was 18 because that's what all my friends were doing. In fact, they learned to drive a little bit earlier because I was the baby in my group of friends. I spent so much of my hard-earned money on driving lessons and on my driver's license. In Germany, it's very expensive to learn to drive. I think overall I spent about 2,000 euros on lessons and the test and the license. And that's all money that I made working mostly tutoring and babysitting and nannying and all the other kind of jobs that you do as a teenager. And it was the biggest waste of money of my life because in my 11 years since I got my driver's license, I have never been rich enough to actually buy a car. So if you have a driver's license, it's not good enough if you then also can't afford a car. So unless you know that you either need a car or that you can afford a car, just don't bother. It's not worth the money. Next point. Read one book every week. I'm trying, Goodreads, okay? I'm trying. Eat a Michelin-starred meal. Now, I have had a Michelin-starred meal, actually. On one of my first dates with my husband, he took me to this Michelin-starred restaurant in Kent, where he was living at the time, and it was very, very nice. Live with a family in another country. I have lived with my in-laws in another country, which is England. Not sure it was as mind-expanding as Business Insider seems to think it is. And then the next point is own a bespoke outfit, which I'm assuming means like tailored for you. And I don't think I have... Oh no, that is not true. My communion dress when I was 8 years old was bespoke. This was made by my aunt and uncle who own a wedding dress company. So they travelled all the way from Italy to Germany to make my communion dress because Catholics are just that extra. I have to say, I was the only kid in my communion group that had a dress like that. It was essentially a tiny wedding dress. All of the German kids were looking at me like, who does she think she is? And that was it. That was the entire list. So if I counted correctly, I did 11 of the things on the list. Let me know how you did. I'm finding it hard to imagine that the author of this article actually has done all 30 things on this list because it seems rather arbitrary and unachievable. And what even is the point of this list and what even is the point of this video? I'm going to leave it there and continue celebrating my birthday by sitting in my office by myself and reading a book. Thank you for watching. Bye!